All right, guys, back touching down from Davao del Sur here in the Philippines in the city of Digos. And today I'm gonna eat some lunch doing what's called a mini boodle fight. I'll tell you about that in a minute, but the main topic of this video is gonna be, a lot of folks have requested in the comments about what privileges and advantages legally you get being married to a Filipino, coming to the Philippines and staying here, as opposed just to coming on a tourist visa or some other kind of visa. So I'm gonna go over what all of those benefits and legal privileges are to you as a foreigner being married to a Philippine. But first, we're going to have an excellent dinner here and eat a boodle fight. So I've ordered this tuna boodle fight, and I'll go into what that is before I start the rest of the video just here in 1 minute. So guys, before we get into the main topic of this video, what we're going to be doing is I'm eating a tuna boodle fight today. And the boodle fight was really developed by the Philippine military. And it's basically, they would put out a big spread of shared food on a table. Everybody'd go around, you'd eat with your hands traditionally with it. This is going to be a small one, just made for like 3 or 4 people. But it will be interesting. It's the first one that I've ever done, and I've been wanting to do it for a long time. So we'll get into the topic here in a second, and then once the food comes, we'll kind of interrupt and show you the food and go from there, all right? So there are several privileges that you do get being married to a Filipina or a Filipino, depending on which one, as a foreigner moving to the Philippines or coming to the Philippines. The very first one, and it's one I've talked about a little bit in one of my other videos, is what's called the balikbayan privilege. And so as a spouse coming with your spouse into the Philippines, and it's important, you actually have to be with them when you come. You can come in on a non-tourist visa. It's still technically a tourist visa, but it's a privilege of your spouse that allows you to come in for 1 year without paying any fees. It's absolutely free. All you have to do is go through the Philippine line, not the foreigner line, in immigration with your spouse. Your spouse requests that privilege, and they'll put the stamp in the passport. Now, you're supposed to have your marriage certificate with you. I wasn't asked for that. You can have your marriage registered abroad at the embassy, and that makes a legal record of it here in the Philippines. We did that years ago when we had first got married. So that's a huge privilege, because if you come in on a tourist visa, one of the things that happens is initially after 30 days, but then every 60 days, you have to go and pay a fee. And those fees can add up over time. And plus you have to go to immigration every 60 days. So, all right, guys, the food's here. So I'm going to break it off and then we'll show it to you, go into the rest of the video. All right, guys, so this is a boodle fight. It's a small boodle fight, but what you'll see here is it's laid out on a banana leaf, and then you've got your pineapples, your rice, your watermelon, your calamansi. This right here is your tuna sigsig. This is a tuna jaw. This is tuna kinilai, I think. I may have mispronounced that, but anyway, and then you've got a soup in here. So you basically just put the plates out, grab stuff with your hand, and then eat it the traditional way. So I'm going to dig into this feast, then we're going to get back to the video and talk about the rest of the topics and privileges that you get being married to a Filipina, legally coming in here to the Philippines. All right, I'm going to eat. All right, guys, that was really, really good. The sigsig was actually spicy, which I wasn't expecting. I mean, not like spicy like I would have in Thailand, but not used to having much spice in the Philippines. It was really, really good. Really enjoyed that. All right, so we're going to get back into the topics. So earlier we talked about the balikbayan privilege, and one of the derivative benefits to that privilege is you can actually get a driver's license here in the Philippines. To get a driver's license as a foreigner, you have to be on some sort of visa type that lasts at least a year, and the balikbayan privilege stamp does do that. So your license here is only good, your international, or not your international, your home country's driver's license is only good here for 90 days. But you can convert it as long as it is still valid within that 90 days if you're here on that balikbayan privilege. So that's really helpful, especially if you're going to be living here for more than 90 days like I am, and you're making this as a home base, because you're going to need to be in compliance with the laws. So the next privilege that you get being married to a Filipina spouse is that you're eligible to do 13A residency. So you can actually get permanent residency here in the Philippines. It's not that difficult. You go through the application process, you pay your fee, which compared to US permanent residency fees is much, much, much more reasonable. But you can get that permanent residency here in the Philippines, and that entitles you to even more benefits, because that means you can leave the country without your spouse and come back in and not have to worry about getting a balikbayan stamp or any other types of visas, because you're already a resident here. Now, there are a few disadvantages to having that residency. One of them is that you do have to pay exit fees, just like if you were a Filipino, when you leave the country. But overall, they're not that expensive, and the benefits that you can get for that residency can very much outweigh not having it. Huge benefit to having residency here in the Philippines or coming back in with your spouse on a balikbayan is that sometimes, as we've seen over the last 2 years, the world becomes unpredictable. And so for a long time, the Philippines was closed. People couldn't get in and out. But if you were a spouse of a Filipino or Filipina, then you were one of the first people on the list to get back into the country if it reopened at all. That's been true basically throughout everything that's been going on for the last few years. So you really wouldn't want to be stuck for years at a time apart from your spouse because a worldwide situation comes around like that and you just can't get in. All right, the final one for the day is if you were to buy a property in the Philippines, foreigners are not generally eligible to buy any real property here in the Philippines. You can buy condos in certain conditions, but you can't just go out and buy land or a home. But if you're married to a Filipino or a Filipina, you can buy property through them, and that property becomes conjugal property. Now, if they own property before that, or if you don't do the paperwork right, that isn't conjugal property. So it's very important to make sure that it is done properly and legally, so it is conjugal property, so if that anything were to happen to your spouse, that it would still be yours after they had passed away. Next is that you can actually be put on PhilHealth if your spouse is on PhilHealth and they're eligible. It's a healthcare program from the government in the Philippines. I don't know much about how good it is compared to other healthcare insurances, but I do know that you are eligible if your spouse has. And I think they have to have paid in, I believe it's for 5 quarters in order for them to add a spouse or another dependent to there. But at least you know that you've got that option to have some sort of health insurance on there that would be low cost and more affordable. All right, guys, that's it for the video for today. I hope that answered the questions that a lot of you were leaving in the comments about the balikbayan visa and about the privileges and benefits you have here in the Philippines legally being married to a Filipino or a Filipina. So if this was helpful, or if you like this content, if you'd hit the subscribe button, it really lets other people help find the channel. And if you hit the like button, that tells the algorithm that this was something useful. If you hit the dislike button, it tells them that, you know, you didn't like it, and also lets me know you don't like this kind of content, and that's fine. It's not for everybody. So leave a comment below. Tell me what you think. Obviously, I got this video idea from the people in the comments section, so It's not one I would have done or had planned to do. So if you've got one that you would like to see and I find it interesting, leave a comment below. Tell me what you would like me to do a video about. Hey, and maybe you'll see it on YouTube. Catch you on the next one.